Hello and welcome. Another Thursday night edition, a rather unique Coach's Corner tonight. And I think this is one that both parents and student athletes are going to find not only educational, but I think eye opening is probably the term that I would use. Uh, Again, joining me, my partner going forward in Coach's Corner, and really a tremendous resource for parents with extensive college head coaching experience at obviously the highest levels of college baseball. Former University of Tennessee head coach Dave Serrano. Dave, thank you for tonight, and it's you and me tonight, and I think we're going to dive into some subjects that both parents and student athletes really need to hear some information about.
As always, Walter, very thankful to be on, and I agree with you. This is an important subject we're going to cover tonight for the aspiring high school parent or player that's listening or will listen to this, because of the way everything is shifting. And I think there's the more education you can get is the better, because at the end of the day, it's about your son or your daughter's student athlete experience at the university or the school they're going to. And I think with how accelerated recruiting is now, people are missing the target a little bit on what they need to be looking for. It isn't about posting on social media that you've made this decision to commit somewhere. It's about making the right decision at the right place at the right time. And I'm really excited about covering some of this with you, Walter.
Well, I want to get started here, Dave, because the legislation, or I guess the first big change with regard to NCAA Division One baseball is the roster size, which really for years had been 35 roster with a 27 man travel roster. And it has been now agreed upon by the Division One Baseball Council, NCAA, to increase on a permanent basis coming out of the COVID. The roster is now 40-man roster, but still a 27-man travel roster, and obviously 11.7 scholarships. I wonder if you can touch upon that a little bit to make sure that parents understand, while on the outside it looks good, increasing the number of roster of spots. In reality, it's going to be a challenge for student athletes to find their way onto these travel rosters.
I'm going to answer this way, Walter. If I was a coach, still, I'd be probably excited about the expansion of the roster, because it gives us more opportunity to evaluate more players into our program and have depth. But as also a father of someone that is playing in the junior college ranks, I see it as more of a negative than a positive. And I hope coaches understand. I'm on the outside looking in now, because I just feel like it is going to give more student athletes the opportunity to go to their dream school, possibly. But at the end of the day, it's about opportunity to develop. I mean, you could develop until you're blue in the face, but you don't develop unless you're playing and you're getting playing time and you're on a roster. And I think if we just navigate through a lot of programs in college baseball in the fall, before our segment started, you and I were kind of chatting. The fall has kind of turned in, especially the Power Five schools and a lot of Division One schools out there. The fall has turned into a tryout now. That isn't set on the front end, but that is reality. And they cap the roster number at 40, but that doesn't mean you can't have 50, 55 or more in the fall coming out. Now, some schools have some barriers to stick by because of numbers and all that. And sometimes it has to do with financial every player you have come out has to get gear and all that. But I'm not so sure it's in the best interest of the student athlete. And one of the things the council always looks at is the student athlete experience. And I'm not so sure the 40-man roster, even though on one side it's going to be good because more kids are going to get an opportunity to make a roster, but you choose to go to a place first and foremost for the academic reasons, and then it's for the opportunity to get on the field. And you could always say, well, there's a transfer portal if it doesn't work out. I don't like to go into anything looking at it like that. Well, there's an out if it doesn't work out, because if you're truly committed to it to be a student first athlete, every time you transfer, it's going to set you back academically. So I think it's something that And who wins in this? I think the Power Five schools win in this. Let's be honest. If you're a student athlete and you get an opportunity to maybe be a roster spot walk on at an SEC school, an AC school, C school, a Big 12 school, or a Big 10 school, or the Pac 12, why wouldn't a kid pass up that opportunity? But it's going to also hurt the so-called mid majors out there, and we already see a divide between both of these entities. But I think this is going to create more of a divide because that young man that could go to a great mid major in Louisiana or Texas or California or even Ohio or Florida is now going to be lured by a Power Five school and may not get that opportunity and then end up at the mid major eventually. So I'm on the fence on this. Like I said, I probably wouldn't be answering this if I was still in the dugout each day. But I think parents and players really need to investigate what's this going to do in the long run to enhance my baseball career and allow me to be academically strong throughout my time in college.
You alluded to the fact that you and I had a little dialogue before we went live here tonight, and you brought up an interesting point with regard to, I'm going to call it a holding tank for these Power Five teams. You kind of can go out now and you're going to have 13 developmental roster spots, for lack of a better term. And then, and then you throw in the mix in the fall where you're going to have these walk-ons and these transfers that are going to try to go into these programs. And so what's happening now is parents really, and more importantly, student athletes, aren't really getting the full insight. And the point that you brought up was the first question that parents and student athletes might want to be asking the college coaches is, what's your fall roster look like? What type of opportunity? And can you kind of go into that a little bit? Because your experience, at an SEC, powerhouse like University of Tennessee, what's that fall process like? And what kind of questions should parents be asking these coaches?
Well, that's a great point you bring up because as you and I know, and some of the parents don't know, we're very restricted. We were Division I coaches are very restricted on the amount of hours and time you could be out on the field with your players. So what does that do? That takes away from really getting to see a lot of your players. A lot of us during the fall, we probably ended up anywhere from, and it depends on your schedule and the amount of days off, but you ended up with like 30 to 33 days in the fall that you could have official fall workouts. You know, I don't know. I know for a fact I'm not smart enough to make hardline decisions on someone's career in a 33-day period. Now you've got that young freshman who's coming in and he's kind of starry-eyed because he's around all these guys that are players that he watched on TV or he's read about. He may not have a good showing in 33 days. So what happens to him? If there's a transfer that comes in that's already 21 years old, now you got this freshman that's maybe just turning 18 or is already 18. I mean, it's going to make it tough for him to make that team. And so I think your point is well taken. I think one of the things parents should ask these coaches is we need to know honestly, what's your fall roster going to be like? Because again, we stick on that number 40, that 40 number, but that might mean that still 15 guys are cut before you get to 40. And then you brought up a great point. Unless the NCAA changes the travel policy or conferences change the travel policy, it's 27 guys go on the road. So let's do the math. If 40 guys are on your roster and 27 guys are on the road, a third of your team is staying home on the weekends. So not only, and I don't think development is only playing all the time. I think a young guy could learn through osmosis of being in the stadium, watching the atmosphere, watching players ahead of them play. But if they're not there, they're going to watch games on TV, and I don't know how much that's getting them better not being in the moment. And those are the concerns for me for the players out there that are making hardline decisions on what's going to be the best interest for their career. Because I've always said this, Roger, we both live in different sections of the country, but I'm going to use an example. When I was out in California, I could take Interstate 5 from my house to Dodger Stadium. That would be the fastest way to get there. Player A could take side streets and different roads. It would take him longer to get there, but he could still get to Dodger Stadium. It just might take him a little longer. And I think that's the way that parents need to look at that is you can get to the same destination. It may just take you longer to get there, but longer doesn't mean that it's worse. And I think the impatience of people and the hasty decisions, committing early, not knowing what's going to be like in 3 years. That's where the downfall is for some of the bad decisions that are being made. And now I think this just enhances it more with more players being allowed to be on the roster. It's going to make it tougher to make an impact, in my opinion.
Well, I think one of the narratives of, and I'm not picking on travel baseball. I mean, travel baseball is here to stay. It's a part of the culture that we live in, and I get that. Both my sons participated in travel ball, at the age of 14 and up. But one of the things that no longer fits is this narrative of travel baseball is the platform or the vehicle that will take you to the bright and shiny big school, big program, Division One, major league draft picks, etc. And it's just not the direction or the path any longer. It is really now about postgraduate schools, junior college programs, and with the transfer portal being the way that it is, it's not out of the realm of possibility of going from a Division II or III or NAIA program into Division I baseball. So along that line of thought, don't you think that more parents and student athletes should maybe be more educated with regard to the realities of college baseball, regardless of division, as far as opportunities, development, what's the campus really going to be like for your student athlete, as opposed to, oh, it's a Division I Power Five school, I have to go to that school. Don't you think there needs to be more information?
I agree, and that's one of the reasons why I think this is such a great platform for us to be talking about, because I think that education, and parents out there need to remember this. This is the biggest decision of their son's life at that current
Huge.
time of their age. It's
Absolutely
huge.
agree.
And I'm going to say, and I don't like bringing this up and talking about myself, but the decisions I made to go to a junior college and then to move on to Cal State Fullerton impacted my whole life. It might have been 5 years of my life, but it impacted my whole life. It is where I am, where I went through my whole career. The people, the coaches I played for, the mentors, my teammates could put me to what the career that I got to have in baseball. And it doesn't mean you have to be a coach, but a lot of the people, when you make a decision to go somewhere, it's not just a 4-year impact, and for some a 3-year impact if they go to college or go to professional baseball. It's a lifetime impact, and that's where I think people are missing the boat, is that people aren't educating themselves on the reasons why they're going somewhere, and not for the excitement part of it. Like you said, it makes everyone excited when you post that I'm going to a Power Five, but in a year, no one's going to remember that if you're not playing and now you're at a junior college or you're at a lower level place. So I think people sometimes need to put their ego aside and allow their most intelligent decision making, because again, this is a very important decision in your son's life for the rest of his life, in my opinion.
Well, I think on that note, what I try to impress upon when I'm talking with not only student athletes, but their parents, and I think this is where you and I both agree, instead of putting all of the resources, the financial means into the hitting instruction, pitching instruction, catching instruction, and then travel teams, if you take your resources and say, okay, what's most important? Number one is academic. So, with regard to academic preparation, whether it's tutoring or test prep and things of that nature, but also being able to speak with somebody who has experience within this process to understand the ins, the outs, what the realities of sitting in a locker room are. I think that is where parents are neglecting that information piece, because I want you to discuss being on campus with these young men when they come in at 18 or 19. Their whole future's in front of them. But it's not just baseball, it's that academic piece, that cultural piece, the campus life. You just drop your son off and you think baseball, but in reality, there's a whole lot more going on with not only the college selection process, but once they've selected the college, they have to live there for 3, 4, 5 years. And there's a lot more to that, isn't there?
Well, I'm going to answer this. You're a parent, I'm a parent. Okay. And as parents, just like everyone that's listening, it's a parent that's on listening to our show right now, you do everything you can to put your son or your daughter in the best situation they can be. Okay, you try to guide them through everything. That's what completely gets stripped of them when they walk on a college campus. It's not mom and dad making sure you're getting up for class. It's not mom or dad making sure you're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning for early weights. It's not mom or dad that packs your bag with all the right uniform stuff that you got to take on the road. You've got to grow up in a hurry. And as a former coach, that's the thing that separated the men, so to speak, from the boys, of the guys that were making the roster on travel days and the guys who weren't. It wasn't always about ability. It was about maturity. It was about discipline, because a lot of these kids, I'll tell you a quick story, Walter, when I don't know why I have that in my mind because we were talking about earlier, but when I was at Cal State Fullerton back in the day of questionnaires, those no longer exist anymore. Questionnaires is when I saw a mom or dad, most of the time it was a mom, writing on a questionnaire, I would tear it up and I wouldn't recruit that young man, because I know that he's had someone do something for him his whole life. That to me is one of the biggest things that affects kids, is that they've had someone do something for them their whole life. And when they get to college, as you said, their whole life changes. And now they're in charge of their life and they've had no guidance of doing things on their own. And that's where they fail a lot, is because mom and dad, and again, we were parents and we did the same thing. Okay, mom and dad made sure their stuff was ready to go to a game. They were packed with some kind of nutrition in their bag. They had their drinks and all that, or they brought them to the field. In real life, that isn't going to happen. And that's why I think playing athletics, being part of a team, allows you to be successful even when you fail, and learn how to succeed. It makes you successful in everything in life, in what you're going to do with your career if it's not baseball, and what you do if you have a career in the business world. It's going to make you more successful because you had to do things to be successful on your own.
Would you also, I would love your perspective on this. So many parents, when they ask me a question via social media, they'll say recruiting service X, recruiting service Y. I'm not here to critique recruiting services, but would you not agree that college coaching staffs as a whole, collective whole, they have relationships. They have almost a recruiting network, so to speak. And that is going to be more meaningful than a recruiting service shoving a student athlete down your throat saying, oh, he's got the upside. He's got the upside. College coaches want to know from their trusted network, this is a guy, this is your kind of guy. This is a guy that's going to develop. Parents seem to think a recruiting service is a magical service, but in reality, the network is really a personal relationship that you would have as a college coach with respected people within the industry, would it not?
Through my career, we relied on coaches we knew, we relied on former players, we relied on our current players that would let us know who were the best players in their region. Relied on scouts, we relied on friendships. I could tell you over my career, Walter, I never recruited a player from a recruiting service. And again, I'm not here to bash recruiting services at all. Okay. Everybody has a niche in something. But if we were going to recruit a player, and we were never always right on recruiting players. I mean, sometimes you miss, and sometimes when you thought you missed, you didn't. But I always wanted our guys or myself to see them with our own eyes. And if we didn't know about a player, then that was our fault. We didn't need a recruiting service to tell us about a player. And again, you brought up a great point earlier. For me, if you feel a recruiting service is going to get them to the next level, I'd invest that money somewhere where if he has to go to a junior college and play 2 years, you have that money from the recruiting service you didn't use and invest it for what every player has to do in college, and that's pay part of their tuition and their fees to go to school. So that's my opinion, and I'm basing that off of my experience. Is that I personally, throughout my career, did not recruit someone from a recruiting service, because I honestly felt, and I probably shouldn't say this, if someone was going through a recruiting service to be seen, then there was a reason why they were going through a recruiting service to be seen.
Well, I think it's important because from a parental standpoint, I had two sons. One son wanted it and worked at it. My oldest son, had the skill and the tools, but his work ethic was more relaxed, I think is the best way to put it. And I used to say to both of them, the key here is to understand, baseball has a finite time limit associated with it. As a player, at some point, you reach a competitive apex where you're no longer moving up. You're kind of trending either sideways or down. And when that happens, you have to look at the guy in the mirror and ask yourself, did I give it everything I had? And so on that, kind of that point, I think it's something that parents should hear from a college coach about the competitive nature every single day, meaning you can't be guaranteed a starting spot as a high school sophomore, as a junior, a college sophomore. It doesn't come because you're entitled to it. You're earning it. So competition, good, bad, or indifferent, is something you have to learn to live with, revel in, and kind of expect every single day. Is it not?
A wonderful point. Before we came on the air, and I knew we were going to have this discussion tonight. I'm sitting downstairs watching Tennessee versus LSU. Okay. I'm watching Paul Skeens throwing 101 miles an hour as a starter against Chase Dolander, who's 97 to 98. And I'm thinking, what high school parent or player is watching this game saying, I'm ready to go face that right now?
Right.
But that's reality. If you want to play with the big boys, you've got to be prepared in every aspect. Your game's got to be good. Your work ethic has to be good. Your discipline has to be good. Your maturity has to be good. Your commitment has to be good. And that's where I feel people are missing the boat by they think they've made it because they've committed to this school. But as we shared earlier, it's very easy for coaches to say, you're not ready to play at this level. You're not prepared to play at this level, or you're not good enough to play at this level. And we move on to the next guy. I'm going to go back real quick, Walter, what you said earlier. Let's say you're on the developmental squad. And I'm saying this as a coach, as a former coach. If there's a developmental squad guy and he's not making the trips, he's not playing, and he's not probably getting a lot of reps in practice time either, because you're developing your team that's playing every week. When you go out and recruit that next summer, do you think the developmental guy is going to be the starter, or are you trying to go find someone to replace the developmental guy and move on from that? And that's what people don't see in this whole big picture, is that it's a dog eat dog world out there now. And you have to continue to improve from the time you commit, whether it's a year, 2 years, or 3 years. You better be better when you walk on campus than when you were when you committed to that school.
I think it's important. I really want to emphasize what Coach Serrano just said here. So we're always thinking, oh, the seniors leave, the juniors might get drafted, there's roster spots. It's not always just a kind of a step-by-step, year-by-year kind of ascent in college baseball. It's every single year. The margin of error, or the margin of being able to be a winning program, an average program, and a losing program is so thin that you have to go out and make your roster better. Competition is what coaches seek within their own roster. And parents seem to think, well, they're going to graduate. They recruited this guy in the 22 class. He'll be gone in 24 or 25. So as a 24 or 25 high school graduate, I'm going to just step in and play. When you say, no, you're going to have to earn that spot every single day, every single week, every single month, every year you're on campus. There's nothing guaranteed. You might be on a roster as a freshman, and then as a sophomore, a whole new freshman class is coming in, and it's competition day all over again. Can you just expand on that as far as, you competing in the fall, the roster gets assembled? It's not just easy street, for the next 3 years if you make that first, year roster as a freshman.
No, what you just described by the senior moves on, I'm a sophomore, a junior, and I move into that spot, that's high school baseball. That's what happens on a high school roster, not in college. In college, I know as a former coach and as a recruiting coordinator, you're always looking to better your team. And if that means hurting someone's feelings, you're going to do it, and even more so now, Walter, because coaches and all more power to them are making such high salaries, and there's such a demand by these universities to win now that they don't have the patience to see a guy develop through the program. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Okay, it happens. Like, I'll bring up a name from the University of Trey Lipscomb, a young man who had a fabulous year for them. But that's a small percentage of guys that have the aptitude to stick around and not move on. And when they haven't played for 3 years and then get a shot and be an All-American and get drafted and playing some minor league or playing some spring training games this year. That doesn't happen very often. A lot of times guys are asked to be moved on. We're going to move on with another player that we found is better, because recruiting never stops. Recruiting never stops. The only reason that it stops recruiting is that they have calendars they have to go by, but recruiting never stops. Coaches are on the phone all the time, getting phone calls from people that they know, like you said, from coaches, from scouts saying, hey, you need to see this guy. And when they get a name, they get excited about him. And that developmental guy, or that guy that might have hit 240 his first year, he can very easily get passed up. But the reality is, I mean, as much as that sounds like it's tough, isn't that the world we live in now? If you're
Absolutely.
not if you're not doing the job at wherever you're working, there's somebody that could take your place, and take it from someone that has lost his job before. At one of my stops is, there's somebody that took my place and is doing an outstanding job. There's always someone better. And if that doesn't motivate you, then nothing ever will. To not stop working.
Well, self motivation as a college student athlete, it's a part of growing up. It's a part of becoming an adult. It's a part of becoming a part of a team with regard to business or family. And that's something that I think gets lost in those early years of travel baseball, high school baseball. I paid money. My son should be, could be. It doesn't work that way. It's the
Yeah.
person that is performing
Hmm.
the best consistently is going to be playing more. That's just the way it works. And so, one of the other dynamics of tonight's call with Coach Serrano is to let parents know that pretty soon, probably within the next week or 10 days, we're going to start to kind of cover college baseball in a podcast format that'll update scores, and we'll talk different conferences, rule changes, kind of like what we're doing here tonight. Next week, we'll be continuing with our college coaches, and we'll really get into the discussion with the coaches with regard to their season and their projections with regard to going forward, some of their thoughts. But Coach, I want to ask you this question. You look around the college landscape right now, and we were talking about the games earlier today. Some of these scores. Really interesting. I mean, I'm talking about a lot of runs being scored. So that tells me one of two things are happening. Either we get a great, prolific offensive surge in college baseball, or pitching depth is really kind of limited. What's your perspective on that as far as some of these scores from the first part of the season?
I think pitching has gotten better stuff wise. As you see, I mean, it's very rarely when I was in my early career that I ever saw a guy throw 101, 102 miles an hour. Guys coming out of the bullpen throwing 104 miles an hour um, consistently. I mean, consistently with a wipeout 91, 92 mile an hour slider. What I think baseball has lost at all levels, I'm talking professional baseball down to high school baseball to even travel ball, is the commitment to command of pitching. And everyone's caught up in the spin rates and all that, and I get it. That's part of baseball now, and I'm not such a dinosaur that I don't think that that stuff's important. Um, but I know over my career, I could bring up three or four names of guys that I had before spin rate and all that I knew had a slippery fastball. They guys couldn't hit their fastball. I didn't need to know their spin rate. They pounded the strike zone up and down, and they got a lot of swing and miss. And I think I was just talking to a young man about this the other day. I think what's happening is that at the lower levels now, kids want to throw hard before they learn how to pitch. And I think that's backwards. I think you learn how to pitch and then your body develops and you end up throwing hard. And if that happens, now you got a really good pitcher. And um, and I think same thing on offense. That's why we see so many strikeouts. Yeah, we're seeing more home runs, but we don't see guys putting the ball in play with two strikes. And I think too many people are getting caught up in that and not learning. I think the biggest thing that's missing now, Walter, is learning the game of baseball and how it's supposed to be played.
Right.
What you see now is guys don't know where to line up for cutoffs. Guys don't run the bases as well anymore. Guys aren't situational type of hitters or situational type of pitching. We're just trying to play the game for results. And what I mean by results might not even mean the scoreboard. It's my results on how I look and not the whole scheme of things. And how can I help the team, even if I'm not throwing 95 and even if I'm not hitting launch angle home runs 450 feet. That to me, and again, I'll probably sound old saying this, that's what we're missing in the game now at all levels. Like you said, again, not everyone has their own way, but I think that's the one thing in travel ball is we're gathering all these players and we're trying to win games, but are we winning games because we're so talented or are we winning games because we're outplaying the other team baseball wise?
See, I think this point, this one central point, is the key metric with the sport of baseball that clearly was evident in the World Baseball Classic. And by that, I mean, as a country, the United States has become so focused on winning versus losing, learning at the younger ages. In other words, learning the nuances of the crafts of baseball, hitting, barreling up a baseball, contact, putting a ball in play, putting the defense on their heels, pitching, throwing strikes, being aggressive, attacking. We've traded learning the game for winning trophies and tournaments, championships, and all of these things that we want to put on the wall and hang in our rooms and things of that nature. And so it's, in my opinion, showing itself within the game. So if you look at Major League Baseball, the sport is now, I believe it's 48 or 49% of Major League Baseball rosters are from foreign countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there has to be a reason for that. And so as much as we want to talk about recruiting and scholarships and things of that nature, I know that coaches such as yourself, and I listen to a lot of the coaches that are kind of hoping the game returns to, okay, listen, we're down by 2 runs and I'm a leadoff guy and the count is 3-1. Make sure this guy throws you a strike. Don't happy hack. You can't hit a 3-run home run. There's nobody on base. There's no moving runners over. Can you just talk about maybe athletes getting back to learning the game at the younger ages, because it's going to help them when it comes time to be recruited when they get older?
Well, I was pulling for the USA in the WBC, and I know your son is playing over in Japan currently right now. It was justifiable that Japan won that. Okay. If you watch their team of how they did things, they put the ball in play and they have power. They pound the strike zone and they have good stuff. I don't know. I'm a former coach, so I watch these little things. I don't know if how many people noticed how the Japanese got down the line every time they hit the ball on the ground. Every time. And to me, it just went back to that's the way the game is supposed to be played. They don't walk guys, they put the ball in play, they play great defense, and they play hard. And I think we've lost that edge because you're right. I mean, I was a coach and I know the scoreboard meant a lot, for my career and everything, more for my career than my pride and my ego. Okay. But we have gotten caught up into that too much. Is that I have a philosophy that I like to use now is if you develop winning players, and what I mean by winning players is guys that know where to be, how to be when you're playing the game and what to do, you're going to have a winning team. But I think too many people now are just trying to collect talent, put them on the field to be able to win games at the end of the game. And we're not developing players as we once did years ago. And I could say that because I coached at a place named Cal State Fullerton that should never have won 4 national championships over a 30-year span of time. But because there was attention to detail and we did things right, we beat a lot of people we weren't supposed to because we played the game the right way and we outplayed them in the game of baseball. So I've seen it firsthand, and it does make me a little sad what I see now. I think players are better. Don't get me wrong. Players are better. They're more physical. They throw harder. They hit farther, but they're not as good of players as once came through because they're not being taught the little things that are supposed to happen in the game of baseball.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I really hope, one of the things that both Coach Serrano and myself are going to be really kind of implementing in future discussions amongst ourselves when we talk college baseball and when we talk to the college coaches is bringing not only an awareness, but we want to bring an educational format
Mhm.
to parents and student athletes. So going forward, if you have questions, put them down below. Coach Serrano can be reached, and we have all of his information under every video. Send him something on Twitter. Send him an email. Learn from those that have come before us to help your children be better prepared for the overall experience collectively, both as a student and then as an athlete. So Coach, I know this is something that we're both looking forward to. I know that now you're going to have to school me on this because he was a former player for you. Kirk's correct pronunciation of his last name is what?
Kirk Saarloos.
Sarlo.
Saarloos.
So
Saarloos.
next week we will have Kirk
Mhm.
Saarloos, the head coach at TCU, which when I watched them play, I got to tell you, they have a little bit of Cal State Fullerton in them because I watch them move guys around. I watch them put bunts down. I watch them move runners. And I'm really looking forward to spending some time and learning about TCU. And this is something that I want parents to understand. We're going to bring you direct conversations with these college coaches. Nobody has a bigger network than Coach Serrano. So these are the types of formats that you want to kind of engage in. Reach out to Coach. When you have questions, you have topics you'd like to talk to him about, whether it's the travel ball world or the college recruiting world, make sure you take some time, fire off a message, direct message, follow him on Twitter, send him an email. That's what we're trying to do for parents and student athletes. So, Coach, I know you have some stuff to attend to tonight. I want to say thank you for joining me tonight. I look forward to talking with you next week when we have Kirk on.
Thank you very much, Walter. I enjoyed it.
You're very, very welcome. And parents, we want you to subscribe. We want to build this up. Coach and I are going to build this channel. We are the Baseball Lifers. Coach has got the West Coast covered. I got the East Coast covered. And together, everything in between, we'll work on that. So join us every Thursday night. We're going to be also starting up probably in about 10 days, probably a Tuesday morning type of call where we do our podcast and we just talk all things college baseball from the weekend before and the upcoming games for the weekend ahead. So be sure and subscribe to the Baseball Lifer channel. That's for both Coach Serrano and myself. We are the Lifers. And until next Thursday, enjoy your week in baseball.